Well, thank you very much to my friend and our great partner across the border, Minister Omar Al-Ghaba, the first counterpart that I spoke to after getting this job and somebody who we have worked with on so many shared priorities. I want to thank and recognize Governor Whitmer and Mayor Duggan for welcoming us to this state and this city. We have just been at the summit of the transportation ministers of APEC, the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation body. People coming from as far as New Zealand, Chile, Japan, and it is a pleasure to showcase the extraordinary successes of this state and this city to that international audience. And of course, both Mayor Duggan and Governor Whitmer have been very important partners to the Biden-Harris administration as we have worked to create good-paying jobs and support the future of American infrastructure and transportation. And we're so glad to be here with Bill Baisden, IBEW member and president of Dynamic Electrical Group, and the many entrepreneurs and the many union workers that he represents, because of course that's such a big part of what this is all about. The U.S. and Canada have long enjoyed a deep friendship and a productive partnership, including and especially around transportation issues. For example, we share joint stewardship of the St. Lawrence Seaway, which moves goods between the Great Lakes region and the rest of the world. 64 years ago, at the opening of the Seaway, Queen Elizabeth II declared it, quote, one of the most outstanding engineering achievements of modern times, a highway which will open the middle of this continent to the commerce of the world, end quote. Today, of course, we're recognizing a different and more literal kind of highway, one that I think very much represents one of the most important achievements of our time, and will shape international commerce and travel, both in and far beyond the North American context for decades and generations to come. So I think it's fitting that this first U.S.-Canada EV corridor runs through both Detroit and Windsor, two of the world's great auto manufacturing centers. About $148 billion in cross-border trade came through Detroit past year alone, and about a third of that was related to the automotive sector. And that's to say nothing of the brand new investments driven by President Biden's policies of investing in America. Since he took office, companies from down the block and from around the world have invested billions of dollars to build new manufacturing plants in the U.S., including new union facilities right here in Michigan. As so many people here know, the EV revolution is already well underway. Consumers, industries, and global markets are already heading very quickly in that direction. So the only real question now is whether the benefits of that EV revolution will be accessible to every driver, whether America and its partners will lead the way, and whether it will all happen quickly enough to make the difference we need it to in the fight against climate change. And we are working to make sure the answer to all three of those questions is a resounding yes. As we speak, thousands of union workers here and across the country are building the vehicles of the future, the batteries that will power them, and the chargers that will support them. And thanks to President Biden's vision and leadership, we're building a network of 500,000 EV chargers nationwide in cities, in rural communities, and along alternative fuel corridors. So today, Minister Al-Ghaba and I, carrying through on a commitment made by President Biden and by Prime Minister Trudeau, are proud to announce the first ever U.S.-Canada EV corridor. It's going to stretch 860 miles, around 1,400 kilometers, all the way from Kalamazoo to Quebec City, a corridor that, of course, includes the Detroit-Windsor tunnel that is beneath us right now. Our goal is for EV drivers to be able to travel far and wide without ever having to wonder or worry about finding a place to charge, not just in the U.S., but across North America. And something we're especially proud of is that our federal investments for EV chargers include those strong workforce requirements, as Bill was describing, like registered apprenticeships and the EVITP, or Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, through which the IBEW has certified over 20,000 electricians to help build this national network. We don't want to create just any jobs. We want to create good-paying, skilled jobs that will help us fight climate change, that will pay the kinds of wages that will help families buy homes, educate their children, and build generational wealth for the future. And that's exactly what we're doing here together. We are working to secure prosperity for this region, this continent, and for our planet, and I am so delighted to be engaging in that work alongside all of you. So thank you very much, and let me direct your attention to the corridor map and again express my appreciation to everybody who is here. With that, I think we have a few minutes for questions from the media, which I think Bobby will be quarterbacking.
Do you have any questions? Go ahead.
First, I want to ask Minister Algabra. I'm from crossing the river in Windsor. Obviously, you are aware of the situation happening there with the Stellantis plant. I'm wondering if you can comment on that. Obviously, it's been topical.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I didn't expect that the first question would be coming to me, but thank you for that question. Look, our government has been talking and taking action about encouraging manufacturing jobs in Canada that help reduce pollution, but also create well-paying jobs. Stellantis' announcement with LG to build a battery plant in Windsor was a great success. There is ongoing negotiations right now, so I feel confident that that plant will proceed, but there's still ongoing negotiations, so please forgive me if I'm not able to share the ongoing negotiations in public with you, but I am confident that this project is going to proceed ahead.
About Cartnego Trades?
My question is, what is being invested in the corridor and decided the route? Why did it go to every corner?
Well, I'll share a word and then yield to the minister. But in terms of the funding, we're each contributing our respective abilities to support this network. And on the U.S. side, what that means is that this can help align the work that the state is doing with those NEVI funds. The way that this is designed in terms of the Biden-Harris administration's support for chargers is that we're not dictating how all of that works. Not all of the answers are coming from Washington, but the funding is. And then we provide the basic principles and standards, including those labor standards, but also standards around making sure that these chargers are easy to use, interoperable, transparent in terms of pricing, so that we really have quality as well as quantity on the network. And in terms of the locations, it's built on our partnership with the Department of Energy, where we've been working for years together to identify alternative fuel corridors, and that important relationship with our Canadian partners so that we can identify how that connection can best take shape. So we're all in on this future, and so glad that we can coordinate both intergovernmentally with city and state partners domestically, and internationally with our friends. I suppose here I say our neighbors to the south, because Windsor sits south of Detroit, but with our Canadian neighbors and friends.
My question is, why is 429?
I'll be quick. Look, for Canada, the Windsor-Quebec City corridor is the busiest corridor for us. And as I stated in my remarks, in order for us to continue to encourage Canadians buy zero-emission vehicles, we need to ensure that we support the creation and the establishment of charging stations everywhere. So ensuring that we have charging stations at the busiest corridor is essential. There, as I mentioned in my remarks, there are a couple of hundreds charging stations, many of which have been supported by federal Canadian government investment to build those charging stations. And I want to take a moment to thank Secretary Buttigieg for his leadership on this. This is part and parcel of our collaborative effort over the last couple of years, not only to grow the economy, not only to enhance the resilience of our supply chains, but also to decarbonize the transportation sector. This is part and parcel as well of a recent announcement that we made about green shipping corridors in the Great Lakes. So this is an ongoing effort where both of our governments are taking action to create jobs, but also reduce pollutions. Thank you.
Just basically, for someone watching this, what do you say to the person that's maybe a little nervous about buying an electric vehicle?
Well, look, this transition isn't going to happen overnight, but it's happening quickly. And what I want people to know is that electric vehicles offer an opportunity to capture savings from of course, fuel savings directly, but also maintenance savings, so that cost of ownership is increasingly becoming lower than it is for traditional gas cars. We're not just urging people to do it because we think it's good for the climate, although it is. We're inviting people to capture those savings, acting to make it easier by making those vehicles cheaper in the first place, with support like what we have in the Inflation Reduction Act, and then making sure that you can depend on a charging network. I would also make sure people realize that if you live in a single-family home and have a garage, as many Americans do, you already have charging infrastructure, whether you realize it or not. It's the plug in the wall. That's how we charge our hybrid plug-in minivan in Traverse City. But whether you do or don't have access to a garage, you're going to need those chargers along the way as well. And that's why we're working to make sure we support you, if you're already an EV owner or if you're going to be in the future, with those options, so that you know, just as sure as you're setting out on a road trip today, you're going to find a gas station when you need it, that the same is true for those electrons you need to affordably and cleanly fill up your car.
Has the train service been stopped regarding the speed because of electric? Because from Detroit to Chicago is 4 hours, and they're supposed to be cutting it down to an hour. Is that still going to go forward, or will electric stop that?
So in terms of our aspiration for high-speed rail, those goals continue to be important to us. There's no one fix for all of the improvements we need to make economically and climate-wise for our economy. It's why under President Biden's infrastructure law, we are investing in both repairing and upgrading our rail systems. And I know that there are visions from across the Midwest for how to do that. Won't happen overnight, but it's very important to provide those alternatives as well as electric vehicles and an increasingly clean and customer-friendly aviation sector. We're going to continue pushing at all three levels.
Kaylee Hall with the Detroit News.
Mr. Secretary, last week we have seen that the UAW is withholding its endorsement for President Biden until they see help to have a just transition to electric vehicles. What can the administration do to help breathe in you and its members in this transition?
One thing that's very important to this administration and certainly to the president is supporting our union workers. It's important to me. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, home of Local 5 and Local 9. I know firsthand how the rise of the middle class was made possible through union workers and the good jobs they provided. We've talked about the building trade side of that with things like the IBEW partnership. Same is true in making sure that workers are benefiting from this EV revolution. Our message is that EV revolution is happening across the automotive sector, and it's going to happen with or without us. We have to make sure that there is success for the U.S. and our friends, and for union workers in that transition, and it's something that we take very seriously.
All right, thank you everybody for coming out. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to do one group photo right by the side here real quick. No one has any questions for me, so very